Hello and welcome to another lecture in the course of Modernism, a study of arms and the man. And again, I should notify that this course is for undergraduate students of literature, and that's why it is important for you to know that I will not go in details and I will not highlight the deeper layers of this play, and I will not, elaborate on the analysis of this play. So I will just stick to the most important ideas of this play and modernism. So today we will talk about the comparison between idealist romanticism and realism. Why it is important to know about other ideas, about other ideologies, and why it is important to make a comparison between idealist romanticism and realism. Because, in this course we are talking about modernism and realism. Realism is part of the modern movement that appeared at the end of the 19th century and 20th century, in the beginning of the 20th century. Why is it important to know about idealist romanticism that preceded realism? It is of crucial importance to understand the cultural context that preceded the rise of realism in modernism. This comparison displays the essence of realism at the death of the change it brought to the intellectual society. It is really important to know and to make comparison when we are studying something. It is of great importance to know the preceding cultural, social, political, and even intellectual context that gave rise to the new movement, to the new idea, or to the new ideology of modernism. And according to Karl Marx, he believes that when we have a new revolution, it is only because there are preceding symptoms, and through the symptoms and when the body of the society or the body of the idea or the preceding ideology dies, when the body dies or when the idea dies, a new form of ideology, a new form of thinking will rise. So because of the failure of idealist romanticism, and when it became futile and no longer useful for the European society, then out of necessity and very naturally, without any intention, this realism and modernism appeared to take the place of romanticism. So it is important to know the most important features of idealist romanticism, its features, its characteristics, and why it failed, why it was no longer providing the needs, the intellectual needs, the social needs, and political needs of the people in Europe. Of course, this does not apply to America or to Asia or to the Muslim wars in the Middle East. This only applies to Europe, because modernism, the way we know it and the way we are talking about which we are talking in this course, it is only about the modernism of Europe. So I hope you will not mix things here. So it is important to know the failure, the symptoms of romanticism, and the reasons that led to the rise of realism in modernism. The first comparison between these two movements, idealist romanticism and realism, modern realism, it is number one. Of course, we are talking about literature, right? We here try to focus only on literature so we can make better understanding of the play of this course, Arms and the Man. Number one, literature's main attitude was exoticism and nature, whereas realism's main focus was the chaos of city life and its agonies. Before the rise of modernism, in a sense that we know it, during Romanticism, Idealist Romanticism, like those great poets, we have Wordsworth, Coleridge, even William Blake, which there are many debates and arguments about whether to include William Blake within this school or not. We have Keats, Shelley, and other poets, Lord Byron. These poets, try to focus mainly on exoticism and nature. Of course, Wordsworth does not belong to this exoticism. We have mainly William Blake, we have Coleridge, especially in his famous masterpiece, the rhymes of the ancient mariner. We have Shelley and his great masterpieces. We have other poets who mainly focused on exoticism, and of course, I should mention here Gothic literature. Gothic literature, in some sense, belongs to Romanticism and this school, which is greatly detached from the real world. Whereas we have in realism, its main focus is on city and the problems of the city, the disorder of the city, and the civilian life, the modern way of the individual, the person who lives in this city. The main focus of these writers in realism, the main focus is the individual himself within this real society, within the real life, within the city life, the urban life. That's why it is it tends to be more useful for the real life rather than that of Romanticism and their dreaming works and their detached, unrealistic, idealist ideas, which really no longer works in the chaos of modern world. Number two, we have Idealist Romanticism mostly encounters the life and story of some isolated characters or even metaphysical beings and their imaginary stories, whereas realism focuses on comprehensive detail about everyday occurrences. In Idealist Romanticism, the main focus or the protagonists of the stories, of the poems, those protagonists are mainly Byronic heroes, mostly. In some sense, they are isolated, they tend to live alone, they are cast away, and they are rejected by the society. They live their own isolated, detached life, and they dream their own dreams, their own ambitions, and they mostly focus on their own life without any reference to the bigger society. Of course, we have examples of talking about the entire society. For example, we have William Blake. He was a perfect critic of the problems of the society, of the Industrial Revolution. But the overall theme of romantic poets and writers, they tended to write about the person in isolation. Whereas for realism and the writers who adopted this type of writing, they tend to talk about the real everyday occurrences, the problems that we see in the streets, the problems that we encounter next door, those events that we face every day in our life, in our offices, in our works. So they talk about real problems, the problems that we encounter in our everyday life. So this might be closer to our hearts. This might, provide better answers to our problems. Whereas idealist romanticism, it tends to teach us serenity, peace, and love. It is like a medicine, or some meta solutions to our problems. Whereas realism, it provides direct and without any shame. It reflects our life as it is. So it might be closer to our hearts, to our understanding. Number 3, we have idealist romanticism deals with unique people who are detached from the concerns of everyday life. They might be kings or queens, princes, or isolated people who do not belong to normal people, and they do not necessarily affect the development of the plot, whereas realism focuses on social class conflict. It mostly highlights the suffering of lower class people. Characters in realism are dynamic and contribute to the development of the plot. Again, this is so similar to the previous ideas here. The characters in idealist romanticism, they belong to a very specific world. They live in their own world, which does not really reflect our society, our ideas, our concerns. They might be kings, queens. They might be very special people, like shepherds who have their own life. Of course, we are not shepherds, so we cannot really relate to their life. We cannot really understand their feelings. And even those romantics or those idealist writers, they of course sometimes tend to deal with extreme characters, like metaphysical characters from beyond this world. They are unrealistic. We have so many examples from William Blake, from Coleridge, from Shelley. They tend to, borrow myths from other worlds. So they are not real. We cannot really relate to their feelings. We of course we enjoy reading about them. We enjoy living their world, but they do not reflect our problems. They do not touch the core of the chaos of the society. Whereas in realism, the characters are from the streets that we walk in, from the next door, from our houses. They might be ourselves. We can easily relate to these characters, and we can understand their feelings, their emotions, and their sufferings. So the characters in realistic or realism writings, they are more closer to our hearts, and they are more useful in highlighting the problems of our lives. Number 4, we have idealist romanticism highlights the subjective, abstract, and emotional side of the characters and society, whereas realism is an attempt to focus on the objective, the concrete. The physical and social concerns were depicted in painstaking detail to convey the ethos of the society. Again, the themes, the ideas, the theories that are presented in romanticism, they are so objective and abstract. They cannot really be applied in this life, in this world. They are so subjective. They are so individualistic. They do not cover the entire society. They only appeal to individuals and to unique individuals, not any individual. Of course, individualism is part of the modern world, but the type of the individual in romanticism, it is so unique. the individual has very, rare characteristics and features, and they cannot be generalized to everyone. So these characters, these ideas, and these stories are so subjective and abstract, and they cannot really reflect our life. Whereas in realism, the stories tend to be more objective. Of course, they are not completely objective. We do not have perfect objective ideas in literature, but they tend to be more realistic, more objective than the romantic writers. They are more concrete. We can feel them. We can visit these characters at any moment when we go out. So they are more realistic. They are more physical, and they can reflect our agonies and sufferings in a better way. And number 5, I really like this idea. This summarizes the entire conflict between idealist romanticism and realism. In Black and White Strangers, Kenneth Warren suggests that a basic difference between realism and sentimentalism is that in realism, the redemption of the individual lay within the social world. But in sentimental fiction or in romanticism, the redemption of the social world lay with the individual. Of course, this says a lot. This summarizes all the ideas, all the comparison between realism and romanticism. I leave you with this idea to read it over and over again, and provide yourself with your own understanding and your interpretations of this quotation. So thank you very much. Stay tuned for other lectures in the course of modernism, and in the common lectures we will deal with the text itself. This lecture and the previous ones were only about the context, the theories that surrounds this text, Arms and the Man. Of course, they are so necessary. We cannot read the text without knowing the context, the theoretical, intellectual, social, and political context of modernism. So you should and you must read and study the surrounding context before moving on to the text. So stay tuned for other lectures, and have a nice time. Bye bye.